The year is 1775 AD. This is the absolute zenith of the Qing Empire. The Qianlong Emperor sits upon the dragon throne, presiding over an era of unparalleled prosperity and territorial expansion. You are in Beijing, the northern capital, the beating heart of an empire that accounts for 1/3 of the global GDP. A colossal city designed with the precision of a master's chessboard, where every brick and ritual is a testament to absolute order. But what was it actually like to spend a day here? Not as a son of heaven or a high-ranking grand counselor, but as a middle-aged clerk and estate manager for a prominent official family. Dressed in a modest indigo blue changpao, you occupy a unique position in the social hierarchy. A man of letters who navigates the corridors of government bureaus, yet walks the dusty markets to manage household affairs. A man refined enough to appreciate the art of tea, yet grounded in the grit of daily survival. Using AI trained on Imperial archives and archaeological records, we have reconstructed what 24 hours in Qing-era Beijing truly looked like. Beyond the golden glazed tiles of the Forbidden City, we see through the eyes of an ordinary man managing the intersection of bureaucracy and daily life. The weight of Confucian discipline, the clinking of silver bullion in the markets, and the lingering scent of sandalwood from the great temples. From dawn to midnight, this is the reality of life in 18th century China. Dawn. The sun has yet to crest the horizon, but Beijing is already breathing. You sense the city through its sounds before its sights. Instead of the low moan of ox-horn trumpets, the silence is broken by the rhythmic tolling of the massive bell from the bell tower vibrating through the morning mist. This is the signal the city gates swing open and the heartbeat of the empire resumes. Your residence, a traditional Siheyuan courtyard house, is a sanctuary of gray brick and carved timber. Unlike the cramped multi-story timber-framed houses of 18th century London or Paris, where residents wake to the stench of open sewers, your world is horizontal and inward-looking. You step into the courtyard, where the air is fresh with the scent of pomegranate trees. Your morning ritual is one of meticulous grooming, using a willow branch to brush your teeth and carefully rebraiding your queue, the long braid that serves as a constant tether to Manchu loyalty. In an era where European aristocrats hide under powdered wigs to mask a lack of hygiene, your grooming is a disciplined act of identity. Before heading out, you perform a quintessential Beijing rite, checking your thrush's cage and ensuring your pouch of silver bullion is secure. Outside, the alarm clock of the capital begins not with the industrial whistle of a Manchester factory, but the melodic centuries-old calls of street vendors hawking fried dough sticks and hot soy milk through the hutongs. As you step into the street, the urban landscape reveals a marvel of Qing engineering. While Western cities of the time are still struggling with chaotic, winding medieval alleys, Beijing unfolds as a grand rigid grid of vast boulevards designed for the orderly flow of thousands, where the absolute symmetry reflects the Confucian belief that the emperor is the pivot of the universe. Morning. By the time the sun has climbed high, you are stepping out onto the grand central axis of the capital. As you navigate the rigid grid system of Beijing, your path takes you past the towering city gates monuments of stone and timber that guard the heart of the great Qing. Unlike the chaotic organic growth of 18th century London, or the fledgling mud-clogged streets of colonial New York, Beijing is a masterpiece of urban planning. You walk upon boulevards, stretching over 98 feet wide, vast paved arteries with designated lanes for carriages and pedestrians. It is a level of civil engineering that far outstrips anything in the Western world. At this time, a physical manifestation of a state that values harmony through absolute structure. As you turn toward the Western districts, the Miaoying Temple comes into view, dominated by its massive, white dagoba. Standing nearly 164 feet tall, this pearl-white bottle-shaped monument is a relic from the Mongol era preserved by the Qing as a symbol of their continuity and divine right to rule. You watch as sunlight hits the golden finial at its peak, casting a long protective shadow over the surrounding gray-roofed hutongs. It is a quiet reminder that in this city, the heavens are always watching. Finally, you reach the bustling thoroughfares, where the social hierarchy of the empire is most tangibly felt. You are a clerk, an estate manager, an essential cog in the machine that keeps a prominent noble household running. Your authority is subtle, but vital. Yet in this city, every soul knows their place. The air suddenly clears as people scramble to the roadsides. You instinctively press yourself against a gray brick wall, bowing your head. A high-ranking official passes in a gilded palanquin carried by 8 rhythmic bearers and flanked by outriders. In this moment, the Confucian social code becomes visible, a silent, synchronized dance of deference, where a single nod or a step aside maintains the cosmic order of the realm, while the founding fathers in Philadelphia are debating the radical notions of equality and individual liberty here in Beijing. You operate within a system of sophisticated stability, the Great Qing Legal Code. Your morning is spent navigating the delicate balance of bureaucracy and commerce. Using your pouch of broken silver and strings of copper cash, you manage the family's acquisitions. While Westerners of this era are often baffled by the lack of a unified national coinage, you navigate this complex bimetallic system with precision, verifying weights on a handheld scale. At the gates of the government bureaus, you exchange nods with guards and petty officials, ensuring that the household's interests are protected through a web of refined etiquette and legal compliance. Through this rigid order, the Qianlong Emperor governs a population of 300 million with an efficiency that the kings of Europe can only envy. By mid-morning, your duties lead you to the Board of Revenue, the financial brain of the Qing Empire. Inside, the atmosphere is heavy with the scent of old paper and the constant rhythmic click-clack of hundreds of abacuses. While the enlightened thinkers of the West are just beginning to experiment with early mechanical calculators, the Chinese abacus remains the fastest and most reliable calculating tool on Earth. You watch as scribes record data with ink brushes on fine Xuan paper. It is an ancient manual system, yet it manages the wealth of 300 million people with incredible security. There is a sharp historical contrast at play here. While you dip your brush to maintain a 1,000-year-old bureaucracy across the vast ocean in Philadelphia, Thomas Jefferson is preparing to sign the Declaration of Independence. 2 civilizations are standing at their respective destinies, one at the golden peak of traditional order, the other birthing a radical new world of revolution. After your official business, you seek a moment of peace at the Yonghe Temple. This is where religion merges with imperial power. You walk beneath soaring red pillars and breathe in the thick, sweet scent of sandalwood incense. You stand before a colossal gold-leafed Buddha statue, feeling a deep sense of humility. In Beijing, your life is defined by 2 things: the strict laws of the state and the ancient rituals of the gods. You are just one person, but you are a vital part of this massive divine machine. Midday. The sun hangs directly over the capital, and the hunger of the city awakens. You head toward the vibrant district of Qianmen to find a seat in a time-honored tea house. The air inside is warm, thick, with the aroma of roasted jasmine and the steady hiss of steam from bamboo baskets. You order a simple but hearty lunch, a pot of hot jasmine tea, and a plate of beef buns, their dough soft and white, filled with savory spiced meat. Eating here is a ritual of balance. You don't just rush through the meal. You dip the buns into a small dish of dark-aged vinegar and pungent garlic, a combination that cuts through the richness of the beef. Between bites, you pour the tea into a small porcelain cup, watching the leaves swirl before the steam hits your face. This tea is more than a drink. It is a global power, While you pay only a few copper coins for this pot across the ocean, this same leaf is causing a crisis. It is the liquid gold that will trigger the Boston Tea Party, sparking a revolution in America. The tea house is a hub of information. You sit among silk traders and scholars discussing the emperor's latest poems. While European cities of this era are often chaotic and loud, this space feels orderly and calm. You listen to the gossip of the markets and news of grain shipments from the Grand Canal. For a brief hour, the strict rules of the morning fade away. Here, in the heart of the world's biggest economy, you find a moment of rest before the busy afternoon begins. You head to Liulicheng Street, the heart of the capital's commerce and culture. The air here smells of old ink, expensive silk, and fine porcelain. Your task is to acquire luxury goods for the family. You move through stalls filled with blue and white vases and vibrant fabrics. While aristocrats in Europe are obsessed with Chinoiserie, paying fortunes for anything Chinese, you are standing at the very source. To them, a single porcelain jar from this street is a treasure. To you, it is simply a household item. Trade here requires absolute precision. You don't use coins for these large purchases. Instead, you pull out a small handheld scale to weigh broken silver. In 18th century Beijing, silver was the ultimate currency. You carefully measure each fragment, ensuring the weight matches the price of the silk. You rely on the raw weight of the metal and a sharp eye for quality. As you pass a high-end stall, a brass pendulum clock from England catches your eye. It is a singing bird clock, the kind of Western luxury the Qianlong Emperor loves to collect. It is a strange sight modern mechanics used as a plaything in a traditional empire. You look at the ticking gears for a moment, a small piece of foreign technology sitting quietly in the middle of the capital before continuing your work. Evening. As the sun dips below the horizon, the rhythmic boom of the drum tower signals the day's end. You perform one final ritual before the city gates lock, taking your birdcage for a stroll. The landscape is hauntingly beautiful. To the south, the deep azure tiles of the Temple of Heaven catch the last rays of the sun. Even from a distance, the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests rises like a majestic mountain of wood and silk, a perfect circle representing the heavens. This is where the Emperor, the Son of Heaven, prays for the Empire's survival. You pause for a moment, looking toward that sacred enclosure, feeling the invisible thread that connects your humble life to the cosmic order of the state. The dying sunlight hits the massive scarlet walls of the Forbidden City, creating a glow that is both majestic and intimidating. It's a visual reminder of the Emperor's absolute reach. Unlike the rowdy sleepless night markets of the Mongol era 1775, Beijing is a city of silent grand discipline. The public world fades as you retreat into the private sanctum of your family. Dinner is a quiet, structured affair. Here, the Confucian social hierarchy isn't a philosophy, it's the seating chart. You occupy the seat of honor. Your sons follow. The women of the household serve with a practiced, quiet grace, adhering to their designated roles. Men are honored, women are subordinate. This isn't just tradition, it's the very foundation of the domestic order. Across the Atlantic, families are beginning to question the old ranks of society. But in your courtyard, stability is king. You eat your rice and seasonal greens in a peace governed by rules. As the paper lanterns are lit, casting long shadows across the gray brick, you feel the profound security of a world where everyone knows their place, from the Son of Heaven down to the youngest child at your table. Deep night. You step out from your courtyard, but you do not stay long. The air in the hutong is cold and perfectly still. Unlike the bustling day, the night belongs to the state. You hear the rhythmic hollow thump of the night watchman's wooden clapper, echoing off the gray brick walls marking the watches. Every gate is barred. Every alley is sealed under the iron rule of the Imperial curfew. No one enters, no one leaves. You walk a few steps in the shadows and see the flicker of torches. It is a patrol of the banners, their armor clinking softly as they march in perfect synchronization down the stone-paved boulevards. Their presence isn't just about safety. It is the visible weight of the emperor's law. In 1775, Beijing was the most policed city on earth. To be caught out here without a valid reason is to face immediate and absolute punishment. Standing there looking at the massive silent silhouette of the city gates against the stars, you feel the profound scale of the Pax Sinica. While the world across the ocean is beginning to burn with revolution and new chaotic ideas, Beijing remains a masterpiece of unchanging precision. You retreat back inside, feeling the chilling security of an empire that guards its peace with iron discipline. You fall asleep on your warm Kong bed, convinced that this silence will last for 10,000 years. So that was 24 hours in 1775 Beijing. It was not just a world of silent courtyards and gilded palaces. It was a city of absolute order and hidden global power. Long before the modern American dream, Beijing was the world's ultimate center of stability, a place where every street, every tea leaf, and every stroke of an ink brush reflected the iron will of an empire at its peak. While other nations were struggling with the chaos of birth or decay, the great Qing built a civilization of unchanging precision, managing 1/3 of the human population with unrivaled efficiency. They left us a legacy that still haunts and inspires the world today. The layout of modern Beijing, the sophisticated bureaucracy, and the cultural pride of a global superpower all traces back to these streets. While the West was looking toward the future through the revolution, China was perfecting the past. The era eventually passed, and the silence of the Forbidden City was later broken by the roar of a new age. But the spirit of that time remains. Even today, the echoes of 1775 live on in the heart of Beijing. The dynasty is gone, but the world was forever shaped by the moment China stood as the undisputed pivot of the universe. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through the High Qing era, hit subscribe and leave a comment. Which ancient civilization should we visit next? As always, we'll see you in the past.